Hello, friends, and welcome to Worldbuild with Us, the podcast where we create fantastical worlds with help from you, our listeners. My name is Rob Hilferty, and I'm here with my co-hosts Daniel Quinn and Courtney Staples. On today's episode, we are continuing in the spooky season by continuing on with our spooky jam. Last time, we introduced a new spooky randomizer, and it was so successful that we're actually going to do something a little bit different. Normally, what we would do is we would expand upon the previous iterations of the list, but this time, we're actually just going to run it back, basically. And instead of doing it, 3 times per individual monster, we're just going to do a full-on spooky jam. We're going to run it 3 individual times. Oh boy, I'm so excited for the spooky season. But before we get into today's episode, I always want to remind everyone that if you want us to build your world, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, where you can click the link, follow some instructions, and within a reasonable amount of time, we'll be building your world. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start the new spooky jam. Our monster this time, I suppose if you're listening for the first time, you might not know what the new spooky list is. First things first, we have to roll for the monster that we're focusing on. And this year we have number 1, you. You are the monster. Number 2 is society. Number 3, ghouls, just straight up ghouls. Number 4, a cult. Number 5, some kind of building. Number 6, some kind of object. Number 7, a creature from beyond the stars. Number 8, an ancient evil. Number 9, the fucking devil. And number 10, some kind of mental or an intergenerational trauma made manifest. So without further ado, our first monster for this spooky jam is... we've got society. All right. And we're next going to roll for the subgenre. And the subgenre this time is going to be... we've got a haunted house. So with the monster of society and a haunted house subgenre, Courtney, kick us off today. Where are we starting? How is the haunted house, society, etc.? Get us going here.
Interesting. I am tempted to take house loosely and go with something else, maybe as the setting, like a haunted medical facility, perhaps. And I say that because the other night, as one does, I was reading disturbing articles on Wikipedia, and I came across one about louse feeders, which were basically human sources of blood for lice that were infected with typhus and were then harvested to create typhoid vaccines. Just the idea of that is kind of horrifying, like having these canisters of lice stuck onto you, feeding from you so that you can potentially benefit society. And yeah, it was definitely a disturbing thing. And I think that could be an interesting take on the society being the monster here, something to do with medical treatments or experiments that are inflicted on people here that benefit people outside, but obviously the people inside are going through something horrendous.
I like the idea that this is like a state mandated thing, or hey, this is for the betterment of society, and you take these unwanted individuals and you're like, hey, guess what? We're going to give you a house. There is a catch though. And then I feel like we do figure out what the catch is in some way.
Yeah.
I think that ultimately making it about society, about hey, this is for the greater good, but then also making those people who are undesirable withstand some kind of horrific thing, I think makes sense. And considering what we're talking about, tracks historically and within, what we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it could be like a company town kind of situation. Like people are brought in with the promise of food and shelter and we'll take care of you and all that. And then they were subjected to these things, or it could be like the psychic energies of these people was still here, like in the future when this place has been abandoned.
I think I like the idea of a company town.
Mm.
I wonder, because the one thing I would want to do, and I don't know how to do it yet, but is the trope of evil facility, right, that has some evil agenda and is experimenting on people. That one's pretty straightforward. So I wonder then if that can be what it seems like on the surface, but something else is going on, such
Mm.
that the facility or the program isn't necessarily the problem, but something else. And I don't know what that is yet, but I think that's to put that in the back of our minds as we're
Yeah. Yeah.
to flip it, because
So
we're
what I'm
expecting Nazis and evil scientists, right? At the end of the day, beholden to some corporate entity. But I
Mhm.
wonder if we could subvert that.
Yeah.
I mean, the easy way to do that is to make it, no, this is actually necessary and genuinely like a positive for the world. With perhaps, like the kind of caveat that, like, because what I'm thinking of, right, is I'm thinking of Saw and how in the more recent Saw movies they try and redeem John Kramer, where it's like he's actually an anti-hero. It's like, no, he straight up murders
Wait,
people.
how did they
Oh yeah.
justify that?
But I don't want to get into it. It's real bad. It's not,
Mhm.
they're not good movies. They're fun movies, mind you, but they're not good movies.
Mm.
Uh, but basically they justify it by actually leaning into, well, he doesn't actually kill anyone, and the people he targets are usually bad people. It's one of those things. It's bad. Don't I'm not getting into it, but what we could do is something like that, where wait a minute. Could we just, I mean, Daniel, were you stuck on the idea that we want this to be good, or can we just subvert the usual trope in an interesting way?
Well, more like the latter, because I don't know who's good and who's bad. That's like a really complicated thing, right? But
Yes, yeah,
the
exactly.
notion that this ends up being the horror is that what the facility is up to and the agenda behind it, the experimentation, those are horrific. But if that's not the true horror, that would be unexpected for the audience.
Sure. Okay, yeah, my brain immediately goes to White Bear, the episode of the Black Mirror. Um, do
Oh,
y'all do
yeah,
y'all know
yeah.
that one? Yeah.
I
I don't
think
So
so,
remember that
yeah.
one.
so without spoiling it, the whole idea is you're in this horrific situation, and then you wake up, and basically people are constantly surveilling you or taking video of you on their phones. And I feel like if we were to turn whatever this situation is and turn it into like a reality TV show or some kind of televised event, that is like, I think that subverts it, because usually the types of horrors that we're talking about here are like literally shied away from because it's too horrific. So I think the idea that if society has grown so numb or even so ravenous for this type of thing, that this is no longer just about like for instance, right? We could have Saw, but what happens if the Saw is actually just like from the government or a reality TV show? So the true horror are we're focusing on the people who are voting for the next horrific torture scene or something like that. That I think has some legs and some potential to go places.
I like the notion of there being more than one layer to what's going on like that.
Mhm.
It reminds me of, and I don't want to spoil it, but there's an episode of the new Dropout series that I'm watching. Not new, but it's new for me. The Dropout series, Game Changers, I think. No, was it a Game Changers or Make Some Noise? One of the two. But where there's a concept of like a bingo game, but there's a lot more going on than just that.
That's Game Changer, yeah.
Game
But
Changers,
Mhm.
that's
it, like,
I know
zooms
I know what
out.
you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it like zooms out and there's other stuff happening. So it's like I like that idea that on the surface it seems like it's this one thing, but then when you zoom out a little bit, actually this is the manipulations of another thing.
Right. So let's make sure that that's embedded in society. Courtney, what do you have to say about this?
Mhm.
What kind of ideas do you think are you percolating on over there?
I guess I wanna veer away from reality TV because we did something like that kinda recently, right? Um,
hmm
so
It doesn't have to be like I don't think it has to be reality TV, but I like
yeah.
the idea of like there's another overriding agenda that's
Mhm.
actually controlling the situation.
Yeah.
So that
Um,
would mean the scientists, not to say that this whoever's doing the experiments are just following orders, but that perhaps they think they're working on something else.
yeah, I'm just trying to, like, figure out what that something else could be, like Or could we even roll a twist to see what that could be?
Oh yeah, that could help.
Courtney, that is a great idea. So yeah, let's roll for the twist. And remember, our spooky twist list has spooky twists. So this time, our spooky twist is going to be add in killer clowns.
Well, there we go. I guess
Yeah.
killer clowns is the overarching entity.
Interesting.
What if it's like a psychological therapy place, and they use like humor as a practice or something
Yeah.
to heal people? But and so we could take clowns in a sense metaphorically, like
Yeah.
the kind of humor they're doing is like creating a psychosis or something. And actually, the program of the humor for healing is actually the agenda of something else. Like they're testing the reactions in the facility. And it has nothing to do with healing people, but whether this, like, I don't know, nerve gas or whatever they're using is actually working.
Yeah. No, I like that a lot. That could be like the CIA testing out brainwashing techniques or something like that they're then going to spread around through TV programs or radio or whatever.
We could go back to Rob's larger idea too of it being connected to society. Maybe it's a political operation, right? Like perhaps they're going to unleash this gas at a rally and then it'll become infectious and spread an ideology. And this is a part of they're testing it.
Yeah, or like to turn things into a laughing stock.
Right, like literally. Maybe that's what's called laughing stock, like the gas.
Yeah.
No, I like that a lot because now it's like, well, I'm also thinking of like not aversion therapy, but what is it? Where it's like you're subjected to the thing that you're afraid of. What's that called?
Oh yeah. Exposure therapy?
Exposure therapy. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, I'm thinking that this could also be some kind of form of exposure therapy where it's like instead of the visceral horror and fear for this thing, it's like, hey, we're laughing at it, right? Something like that could work as well. But I love the idea of like an ideology becoming viral in some way. That is like super sinister. And the idea that there's like this event where it's like, well, imagine that like January 6th was engineered, but not in the way that conspiracy theorists think it was, but like in a way where it's like, no, we've actually infected these people and this is how it's manifest, right? Where it's like, how can we foment like political uprising
to keep them cool is actually the gas. It's mixed with the gas, and so it gets the audience to get like hyped on whatever's happening.
Yeah, could be something to like counter horrible things like shootings or bombings or anything like that. Like instead of having people get so like really sad and depressed after and have people push for legislation about various things, they just spray a bunch of this stuff around and everybody's like, oh, it's fine. That was just a funny thing that happened.
Or like even like on a more pragmatic level, it's like, listen, we need to have people not panic whenever there's a shooting because these events are so common now. So we're going to expose you to these things. And so now whenever like a shooting happens, it's like laughter and, like eerie calm. And oh my God, all of that is like really fucking interesting to me, actually.
Yeah, it's like kind of an emphasis on like just getting back to normal, like how with COVID too. I mean, the government at a certain point was like, well, we just got to reopen everything. So you're fine. Right. Yeah. So something like that, where all these horrible things are countered by like, no, just get back to work. We got to keep the economy on.
Literally just call the gas the new normal. And then you're pretty much good to go on that one.
Yeah. So how's this tie in with the haunted house thing though?
Well, I think the facility is still the haunted house. Like it's where the event, not the event, but where the narrative takes place. Yeah.
Right. And actually, if we want to use haunting as a metaphor for trauma, like it is literally like maybe the site of a shooting, or like you're bringing these people in and be like, hey, you were part of a shooting at this facility. Do you remember it? And then like them slowly becoming more calm and prone to laughter and fits of joy and stuff like that. And it's
Yeah.
this deep subversion of what a haunting actually is.
Could also be like taking haunted house as like the kind that you walk through and get scared by people jumping out at you, and like maybe this facility is this almost maze-like structure where you just encounter horrible things in every room, and they log like how
Ooh.
you're reacting based on how much of that stuff you have in your system.
That's fun. I like that a lot because
Mhm.
now you're like, I can also imagine that, oh, that isn't dry ice that they're pumping in to make it look misty. They're actually like increasing or decreasing the volume of whatever the dosage is in that drug that they're testing out, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So that, I
Which
mean, all like, I love the idea that the government has a sponsored like spooky night, right? Where except it's it's like a horrific, like testing facility.
I mean, you can structure you can structure the revelation of the facts in layers too. So instead of the facility literally having a maze horror structure in it, it could be that the patients subjected to the drugs envision themselves imprisoned in such a thing and
Mhm.
psychologically experience this. And so that's they kind of can trap each person in their own sort of horror to test the effects of the gas. Because
Ooh.
imagine, navigating this space, thinking you're in this horror house, and you're trying to figure it out. You encounter other people, but they're all people that are going through the same psychosis. And then when they get out of that, they realize they're trapped in this facility where things are kind of, anodyne and what you'd expect from a facility. And then the next layer is they discover the real agenda of the laughing stock. So then you end up having to like surface from these three layers of horror. And
Mm.
if you structure this as a movie or a novel, you could put the revelations out of order. So like you could have one character waking up in the lunchroom and going through their tedious day being committed, but then the next scene they could be like trapped in the locker running from some monster, and really it's because they're skipping through this levels of psychosis.
Mhm.
Yeah, I do. I'm thinking about if I were to structure this like a novel, it would definitely be like juxtaposing chapters where one is a person who's trying to survive like an active shooter,
Mhm.
cut to some scientist who may not be witnessing this event, but is certainly like the jarring aspect of why are we focusing on this scientist and the sandwich that he's eating for lunch and the kind of like drama, the office drama that's happening within this facility, and then cut back to, and then, like slowly you see how these things kind of
Yeah.
intertwine together.
In the
I
same
think
way that like
something
a
like that
mad
works really
patient would
well.
realize, right? Like the same way
Yeah.
they would come to terms with it.
Or like even on a meta level, like, oh, the reader realizes what's happening, and that's where the kind of horror
Yeah.
comes from as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sort of like not I mean, this sort of spoiler, but Cabin in the Woods-esque in a way.
Mhm.
I feel like we're outside of the spoiler territory for Cabin in the Woods, where I'm not gonna like just be batting shit out there like crazy, but I feel like
Yeah.
that movie's like 14 years old now, right?
Oh, is it?
I think it's like 2010.
That was not 14 years ago. Shut up, Rob.
But
I
so like you never know when someone has
Yeah.
something. Like I can understand like Star Wars, like there's
yeah.
almost no one left that doesn't know Vader is Luke's father and all of that. Uh-oh. Spoiler. But
Oh, geez,
Shit.
Daniel.
Okay. So I feel like we're at a good stopping point for this particular scenario. Again, this definitely feels like we could run this for a spooky one shot easily. Especially, like once you weave in the interpersonal stuff. The one question that I would have, uh, that I think that we are okay not knowing right now is what makes our protagonist the person who is able to uncover this thing. Like, what about their experience allows them to uncover the overall facility's truth, right? But again, I feel like that's an aspect that you would play to find out, and that's totally fine. So I'm cool with jumping over to a new jam session. How about you guys?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's kind of light on details, but that's okay
Mhm.
in this situation.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, if that's the case, then let's go on over to our spooky list once more. And our new monster that we're going to be dealing with this time is, oh baby, it's the fucking devil. That's what we got. Our monster is
Hell
the
yeah.
fucking devil. And our subgenre this time is going to be, so this time we've got the fucking devil mixed in with some cosmic horror. So this one I think is rather interesting because I don't think we've ever had this particular combination. But also I just like the idea of seeing what the devil does with cosmic horror. So Daniel, Courtney started us off last time, and considering I know that you have a particular fondness for cosmic horror, why don't you get us started this time? How does the fucking devil mix in with cosmic horror?
If we're thinking about the two topics, they would seem to be antithetical. So I have to think about what they mean. You know, the devil is about rebellion to an established order, and I mean that's how I would charitably talk about him. Um, and cosmic horror is about the idea that there isn't an established order in some respects. So I don't know. I have to. I don't think I have enough information just yet to think about it. I have to think about it.
Well, when we consider it on that thematic level that you're exploring, imagine that, or one thing I would perhaps push back on is not so much that there is no established order. It's just that the magnitude of our established order within cosmic horror is outside of what we've previously known. So it's like, imagine that we are the fishbowl and then the fish realize that there's an ocean. That's typically how I would imagine the kind of like breaking of our pre-established boundaries and borders within the scale of cosmic horror.
Well, I think there is though, in the idea of acosmicism, that it goes beyond just. It's really a nihilistic point of view. Like it's not just that the universe has no meaning and there's no structures that govern it, but it's that it also is apathetic towards you, and whatever reasoning it has is beyond our understanding. That it's actively hostile towards you. Like there's a sense of total loss of meaning and no ability to recover it. Like you can try and create your own meaning, but it doesn't matter. It goes beyond like, so, you know, like in Fight Club or in a lot of the est kind of cults, the idea, which is not a bad idea, it's what nihilism is actually about. The idea that the universe has no meaning, and it's a good thing that it has no meaning because it implies we have to create it. Cosmicism goes beyond that and says, oh no, it really doesn't have any meaning. And the things out there that exist that have some kind of fundamental reality are chaotic, unknowable, and dislike you.
Yeah.
Or are empathetic towards you. But I think that that's very interesting because, you know, Satan, at least as a figure, and one of the ways to read him in the Bible, he's someone who rejected you know, the established order, like what is fundamental to the universe, which is God. He said, no, fuck you, I'm gonna do my own thing. And then he's punished, and we get the propaganda against him. So it's like totally opposite things. And I think that's cool. Like I'm not rejecting that idea. I like the idea of them mixed together.
Sure. And I love what we're talking about here thematically. I think that we can square this, especially if we focus this in a way that centers on religion, on the idea, like, because what I'm thinking of is we're pulling a switcheroo, right? If we're focusing on a character who is embattled with the devil, with the literal fucking devil, only to recognize that, oh, this is not the devil, this is something else. And it is even like it peels their mind back even further because because the devil to a certain extent is safety, is an established and known quantity of evil within that kind of canon, right? Like you said, it is a creation of God. But what that allows is that, like, okay, at least it has an origin point and is known to a certain extent. Now imagine that the devil is then ripped away and replaced with something even more vast and unknowable, and how that would react to a certain worldview, especially a particularly fundamental one. I feel like going in search of the devil only to find something far worse in response is a really interesting journey and a really interesting type of horror that we don't often encounter.
Now I'm thinking about the movie As Above, So Below, and how it's about this group of people who go into the Paris catacombs in search of basically the Philosopher's Stone, and not surprisingly, things get pretty weird down there. And I could see something maybe similar where we're following like a team of researchers or archaeologists or what have you, and they think they're looking for something in particular, but end up uncovering something much, much more horrible and experiencing something that they'd never even remotely thought possible.
Oh, I like the idea of these people looking for, maybe they're looking for a biblical truth, like
Oh
that
yeah,
would connect. It has to do with Satan, and it would
yeah,
connect the Bible to reality in a way that's provable. That for the first time they'll have actual evidence,
yeah,
um, and that would tie into the idea of a cosmicism, because here it's like you're finding proof of what you hope to be your faith, but it turns out to be something completely different.
yeah. Like maybe what is it? Is it Lucifer that like comes down in a star called Wormwood or something, or is Wormwood in Revelation? Might be in Revelation,
I have
but
no idea.
trying to remember early in Genesis what happens there.
Wormwood is a star or angel mentioned in the book of Revelation, said
Yeah.
for
Okay.
bitterness and destruction. When it falls, it poisons the waters, causing devastation. Oh, it does say, let's see, if you're asking about how Wormwood might be involved when Lucifer arrives, it suggests an apocalyptic or end time scenario. Blah, blah, blah. Wormwood might be a celestial herald of Lucifer's arrival. Oh, that would be kind of cool if they are looking for this fallen, maybe they're
Yeah.
looking for this fallen, a physical evidence of this fallen angel, Wormwood, or herald, whatever it is, because that would lead to proof that Revelations is happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like the idea that there is some kind of cosmological event, like maybe there is a meteor shower, or maybe there is something that feels biblical. And so, there are like the religious folks who are like, this is it. This is like actual evidence that this thing
Uh-huh.
is happening. And that's the wormwood type thing that you're talking about here. And then when they discover it, I want it to go beyond just like oogie boogie monsters and stuff like that. I want it to be something that is perhaps less substantial than an individual, like, like scary beast monster. I want it to be somewhat more esoteric than that, or perhaps more ephemeral, because I feel like the horror that we're dealing with here is not necessarily like the fucking devil, the monster, but the fucking devil, the idea of it, the unraveling of your known world in like your known like cosmology, so to speak. It's I feel like for some reason I feel like to the religious folks this is worse than atheism. And I don't know why, but like there's something about that to me that rings true, where it's like, oh, this is even worse than what we could have ever imagined.
Well, and I think that's kind of where you're going, because Courtney's going, because they're looking for wormwood.
Yeah.
They find something that I imagine unravels their faith entirely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I had in mind. Like there's something like a meteor shower, or something falls to Earth, or there's some sign in the stars, whatever. The researchers show up to start poking around with it. The weird shit starts to happen. And I mean, I could honestly even see it being the fucking devil as the thing that they do end up encountering, but the devil is like so much more vast and um I don't know, abstract than what it's presented as in the Bible.
I
Like,
mean, maybe the truth is that God doesn't exist, but the devil
yeah,
does, you know?
yeah, yeah,
And
Hmm.
the devil doesn't care about anything having to do with what was expressed in the Bible. All that's just a sham. And he
yeah,
is like kind of this a cosmic entity that has plans we don't understand. And what it does is just unpleasant in various ways, and we can't make out the meaning of it. And so this descent into wormwood is just a revelation that nothing means anything, and there is an actively hateful force out there, you know.
yeah. Or not even
Oh
hateful,
God.
but just like not like apathetic. Like,
Apathetic, yeah, like, it's just not, it's alien, you know?
right, like you all are ants to me, and I'm gonna zap you with my magnifying glass kind of thing.
The devil is what happens when the cosmic eye gazes towards humanity for an instant.
Yeah.
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 It's like it is, oh no, we're under the withering gaze of the cosmos. It hurts. Please stop. Please look away. Please blink, if anything. You know?
Yeah. And I
But
could
it's
see
called
it.
Blink. I like that.
Yeah, I do like that. And I do think it like works well with Revelation. Like, even now, all of the groups and people who are kind of wanting the Book of Revelation to happen, but like when you read it, it's fucking horrifying stuff that happens. Like, there's a lot of horrible things, and I could definitely see like a group of devout people being very excited that this is on the verge of happening, and then they realize that what they thought or what they envisioned was a pale comparison to what's actually going to happen.
I mean, I think the revelation that finding not because they were looking for credible evidence to finally stick it to atheists and say, here's your evidence. It's physical. It follows the laws of empiricism, which shouldn't be possible anyway. But let's say that's what they're looking for. But instead, they find empirical evidence not only that God doesn't exist, but that Satan does, and only him.
Yeah.
That would be utterly destructive to your faith.
Right.
Right.
It's like I haven't read the books, but in the first episode of like the 3-Body Problem, the sci-fi show on Netflix, it turns out that like physics is breaking on Earth, and it could be something like that, where just really weird shit starts to happen that should never, ever possibly happen, and
I
just
think
completely changes their view.
and that manifesting as like an outlined by the revelations would be really cool because they have an inkling, but they have no idea how bad it really is going to be.
Right. Yeah, I like that.
Once again, I'm going to point towards Childhood's End, because one of my favorite moments in that is when the aliens finally come out from their pod and they're like, hey, we've actually been surveilling you your entire like species' existence. So if you want to look back on any point in history and see what actually happened, here are the tapes. And it like completely dissolves all the world's religions because of like it's really interesting because it's like, oh, I think the prose itself says something along the lines of like humanity's curiosity inevitably gets the best of itself or something like that. And I feel like that's true. And I also feel like we can tie that into what we're talking about here as well, where maybe the forbidden knowledge is just like, here is what the world looks like, or here's the true history of the world to a certain extent.
I mean, and into Childhood's End, the aliens look like Satan, all of them. That was the really horrifying part of it too.
That is correct. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Man. Yeah. I love that book, by the way. I did not expect to like it nearly as much as I did, but it's a great read. Okay.
Oh, and what you were just saying about like curiosity, Rob, from the book was like made me think like, oh, what if at the site of this wormwood thing there is a tree with an apple on it, and it's sort of like a new Genesis kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we don't have to go on that route, but
yeah, I mean, I think that there's something interesting there, you know. I thought of something incredibly juvenile, but I'm going to cut it anyway. But anyway, I think that we've established a really interesting kind of like dichotomy between like cosmicism and the fucking devil. I feel like we're ready to move on to our final jam. How do y'all feel about that?
Yep.
Phenomenal. So for our final spooky jam of the season, our monster this time is going to be you know what? Fuck it. We're going to roll with it. We've got an ancient evil, which I think is interesting considering how close that is to the fucking devil. So I'm really interested to see how we manage to like push against that to a certain extent. And I think that maybe the subgenre might help us out. And our subgenre this time is going to be Oh yeah. No, that's absolutely going to help us. We've got family horror. So
Mm.
something that is related to the family, either as a unit, as a metaphor, or directly. That's a real interesting one. And what do y'all got? Let's see. Courtney, kick us off. Family horror and ancient evil. How do those blend in your mind?
Hmm. That's a tricky one that we could go in a lot of directions with. Like, there's the idea of generational trauma and something being passed down through a long line. Like in the past, some
I
ancestor
have
did
seen
something.
Hereditary. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that too. But let's see. Or there could be something with, um, I mean, pregnancy and motherhood is always a fun horror subject. Um,
Yes, motherhood, the true ancient evil.
pretty much. um, um, just trying to think here.
No worries. That's why we pay editors. It's all good.
And like when you brought up an ancient evil, like you said, it's similar somewhat to the fucking devil, but also I was thinking like, since I have a thing for ancient like Sumerian um, religions, something like very primal from back then, but I don't know how that would tie in with family. So I'm kind of leaning towards like something hereditary or ancestral in some way. What do you guys think?
I'm thinking about like what made our ancestors afraid. Like
Mm,
historically, we know that we either killed or fucked or a combination of both, the Neanderthals to death, right? Like
mhm,
to extinction. So maybe there's something that is around that time that is, like, oh, this thing actually wiped out large swaths of humanity in a proto sense, and now it's
mm,
made manifest once more, right? I think
mhm,
that just based on what we've talked about so far this session, I do want to try and steer away from something that is more cosmic or devil like, but I am interested to see like how we can make this manifest, especially when it comes to, like a hereditary problem or like a family problem, or maybe we just go really really mundane with it, and it's like, how does the Necronomicon affect the interpersonal relationships of this particular family? We could go someplace like that with it as well, because there's a lot we can do here.
I'm thinking of the Shadow King when we were talking about Neanderthals and some early oppositions of humanity. Um, because one of the things that Shadow King is usually characterized as having in comics is the psychological effect, and he's lasts across generations. So I wonder if
mhm,
like whatever this thing was, maybe it had physicality in the past, and like you said, had some pivotal moments in the primal fear of humanity. In the present or in the context of this narrative, its residue is being carried from person to person in a family, perhaps. And
mhm.
so you can keep the focus tightly on this present moment with the family and dealing with this passing from A to B. I just
Yeah.
don't know how it's connected to them, like why they would have it in them or what, Maybe it's as dumb as like, this is the highest percentage of Neanderthal in your genes.
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, we could have it be some kind of ancient curse. Like we haven't done anything like that, and I think having some kind of a curse that works its way through, like the the generations, that there's some interesting stuff we could do to that. Especially if it's like we've given you a ticking time bomb where it's like, hey, after so many generations, then you will see this curse manifest or something like that.
Hmm. Or it
Yeah.
could be like I don't know, some power that people harnessed way back when in order to overcome the Neanderthals. And
Oh.
over time, it's become twisted and is starting to come out in worse ways now.
A human gene.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
thing that truly makes us human, maybe.
Oh, I like that conceptually.
I think conceptually that's really interesting.
Mm.
Like there is something that is like we have to reconcile with,
Mhm.
or maybe that's something that we can kind of play into the family part as well, where like the father is a scientist or a historian or something like that, and they're recognizing the things that they're so afraid of manifesting in their children. And it's
Mhm.
like, I don't know what to do with this. Like ethically, what am I supposed to do if I know that my children are going to become horrific murderers
Oh,
or
Mhm.
something like that?
okay. Like, but bouncing on exactly what you're saying. What if, and what Courtney just said, which I think is like a linchpin. What if psychopathy, which we've determined
Yeah.
is genetic into some, it can be it's triggered, but it has a genetic basis. What if that is in fact the thing that makes us human?
Yeah. I was
That
thinking that too. Yeah.
like our ability to it's not our ability to empathize, it's not our social capacity as animals, it's our ability to be cold-blooded psychopaths, whereas in
Mm.
nature such beings are either amoral because they don't really have the intelligence to think about that, or they murder for various like natural reasons, but we're the only creature that has psychopathy at its core potentially.
Yeah. No, I was thinking that too, like thinking to gotta reference Octavia Butler, of course, in the Xenogenesis books, how the aliens that come to Earth tell the humans, like, the thing that stood out or was most interesting about you, but also led to your downfall was the combination of intellect and hierarchy.
Yeah.
So it's like that hierarchical need to have power is
Mm.
what's doing it.
Our
If
fundamental selfishness or evilness. Not even I
Yeah.
mean, I guess it is. Like in psychopathy, there's narcissism, right? There's a lot of traits to it. But what if we're the only creatures that have the, like you said, the intellect and the ability to be that selfish?
Yeah.
Right, because otherwise it either gets bred out or it is kind of like societally pushed out. I
Hmm.
mean, I
Mhm.
was thinking about this. I was at the Natural History Museum in recently, and I was thinking about the difference between like chimpanzees and bonobos, because chimpanzees are often the more famous like cousin to humans, right? Where they're tool users, they're incredibly territorial and violent, but not nearly as many people know about bonobos, who are just as equally far apart from us on a like genetic scale, but all they do is like have sex and like chill with each other all day long.
Mhm.
And like I think that like that's something that we don't recognize enough, where like kindness or like love is like just as much a part of us, because we see like the violent as the kind of seductive quality of it. Like there's a seduction to evil that people will look towards and be like, well, I can get power really easily that way. Like I
Right.
could spend a lot of time and energy like negotiating and talking through stuff, or I could pick up this pointy rock and make that problem go away really easily. And to have it be like purely genetic, like when I say ancient evil, I'm not thinking about like there's spoilers for the shitty Dexter books, but it's not going to be like in the Dexter books where the dark passenger is a literal ancient Sumerian demon.
See,
Like,
we're going back to Sumeria. It all ties
yeah,
back.
but only to spit at it. But no, like I want it to be like, no, this is just the darker part of our nature, and like a scientist reconciling with like, what do I do when I recognize that my children are psychopaths, and what do I
Mhm.
do when like I am part of that problem? That to me is a family drama, and that to me is a lot more interesting, I think, especially because like you can turn up the cheese if you wanted to have like killer children, like if you wanted to go schlock with it, or if you wanted to be a little bit more highbrow, you just have it be a lot more about the philosophical debate of what this looks like, what this means, and what our moral responsibilities to the future are. If we can see this genetic, let's call it a defect, and if we can cull that or curb it to a certain extent.
Like I could see your scientist person. Maybe they study like I don't know what the study of like the descent of man is, but they realize that the divergence between Neanderthals and humans had to do with the onset of this human gene, and so the psychopathic murder of them and the rise of humanity. His earliest ancestors are tied to those. Like he can trace it that far back, kind of the 23andMe, how much of you is a Neanderthal. So he has 0%, and his children. Well, he's found a way to, maybe he like goes to a shed and murders animals. He's controlling his own psychopathy, and that's how he knows what he is. But his children have inherited it, and so the horror for him is them developing this and also realizing that it's the basis of humanity.
Alternatively, we can have it be from the opposite genetic spectrum where, you know, the husband is the one who's like, okay, I come from like, hey, I have a lot of Neanderthal in me. So that means that there's a lot of kindness and joy and love, but they've married someone who has a high level of psychopathy in their, you know, like genetics and stuff like that. And it's his realization that, oh shit, I've married into a family of psychopaths, and like maybe uncovering some kind of dark secret about the wife who is the one going to the woodshed in order to get her aggression out on local animals or something like that, you know? And like, you know, like just switching the POV 1 degree to a certain extent.
You know, I kind of like where Daniel's coming from, where like it's this person who maybe it isn't even as extreme as like killing animals in the shed, but there's some other outlet for their feelings, and like it's a societally like accepted one, or maybe multiple outlets that combine to help this person get rid of or control or have an outlet for that psychopathic behavior. And then like
he's that one dude at community sports who's way too aggressive and way too into the game that he's playing. Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Although the wife could be a very important factor too.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, because she might be either realizing what he's about, or I don't know whether she would be like how you factor in, but I feel like she's an important factor too.
Ooh, what if her line has been purposefully seeking out people with minimal to no Neanderthal genes to like continue to breed the quote unquote pure humans.
Oh, so she's in on it.
Oh, yeah. So
she's Southern. She's Southern is what you're telling me. Okay, I got you. Yeah.
So maybe, so is she also like assigned in the same department? Like, did they get married like in the same academy or something?
I think she must, or her family must be some like scientific or pharmaceutical company that's been doing a lot of genetic research.
Make more CEOs, because you need psychopaths.
Oh my God, yeah.
Okay, so she is a retired CEO, right? So she works at the university, but she's tied to, like Rob is suggesting, to a very wealthy family that has like pharmaceutical connections or whatever. And for generations, they've been tracing this. This is why she married this guy, because he's so close to the original gene, and she can make children that perpetrate it.
Right. It's kind of like in
CEOs.
It's kind of like in Dune, how the Bene Gesserit have like been planning this thing and like coordinating this breeding cycle, basically.
Yeah, that's super fucked. I'm into this. Yeah, I'm 100% down. Okay.
I'm glad that Rob introduced the wife, because she was like the tripping point there.
Yeah. And I think like, the husband will gradually realize things, or like maybe the wife will, take the kids on a weekend trip, and that ends up being like, oh yeah, we were just murdering people or something. Something like that.
We were playing your buddy that you gave $10 to every day, out of guilt, who lived on the side of the street.
Yeah. That's fucked.
Oh man. That's fun to tell. Okay.
Wow.
I'm happy with that. Like, I think that final push towards like old money and also like a designed psychopath is really fucking horrifying.
Yeah.
Christ, man. Yeah.
Because I mean, have you encountered like psychopaths in real life? I have, and it's remarkable. You know, there's a certain comfort though in knowing what they are, because strangely, it's easier to control them when you know how they think. As terrifying as they are.
I've encountered narcissists and like chronic liars and stuff like that before. So I think that they're close to psychopaths, but I wouldn't necessarily call them psychopaths. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've encountered actual psychopaths, especially in business, and
It's always business, Daniel.
yeah, it's remarkable
always
how predictable they are. That's the thing. Like, I'd almost rather deal with a psychopath than someone who's just manipulative and selfish, because a psychopath, like, the way they operate is rational in a strange way, you know.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to cut all that stuff out, but you know.
Keep it. Because you know who you are, psychopaths. You know who you are.
All right. Well, do we have any final words before we end on this particular spooky jam of the spooky season?
I didn't put any of my decorations out this year because I had too much work to do.
Wow.
Oh, that's sad.
That's disgusting.
It's horrible. I might throw something
Well-
together before the kids show up on Halloween, though.
No. Well, if that's the case, then I'm ready to call it there. I'm going to say that this has been a great episode of World Build with us. And remember that if you want us to build your world, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, where you can click the link, follow some instructions, and within a reasonable amount of time, we can be building your world. If you want to follow us on social media, we are over on YouTube and Twitter. So you can go ahead and follow links for that in the description of the very episode. Or if you want to talk to us more directly, you can go over to our Discord, where we sometimes chat about world building or, I don't know, new video games and stuff like that, all sorts of stuff. And finally, if you want to support us, guess what? We've got a Patreon where you can get access to sweet, sweet patron-only goodies. And you can go ahead and support us over there with a link for that in the description. That's going to do it for this episode of World Build with us. Remember that we love you very much. We're going to get through this together. Until next week.